for a little while. Oh, we're live, everybody. Good afternoon, world. This is Zoe Bywater from Belvoir, and I'm pleased to say hi to Fraser Edwards Cleaves again. We last spoke in August last year, which seems to have flown by. I don't know about you, Fraser.
I know. I can't believe it's been that long, but it feels like so much has happened in that time, but it's gone in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, and obviously the reason today for catching up with you, Fraser, is there's obviously a lot going on in the news, and especially in the industry news, about rent arrears. And I think it's probably an opportune time to sort of bring this subject up again for landlords, because there's a lot of things in the pipeline that may well affect obviously the situation for landlords at present. So obviously what I was going to try and do is not bore everyone to death with statistics, but I just thought I'd throw a few in there just so people are aware of it, and then obviously touch on this new bit of legislation that's coming in that landlords might not be aware of, and then obviously talk to you about how you might be able to help anybody out there that then is worrying about what we've just told them, because obviously when I read these things in the industry press, I get worried. So This Is Money actually said that there are approximately 840,000 tenants in arrears at the minute, 7% which they think is due to COVID. And the London School of Economics in November said that this number could actually triple in the next 12 months. And obviously when you read things like that, you start to think, my God, this is troubling, especially if you're a landlord. And maybe you can't afford to have rent arrears clocking up. I mean, one of the other sort of things that's come up is that we all know that we can't evict anybody right now, and there's a backlog of court cases. And I think the LSE, London School of Economics, also said that it could take to 2022 to 2023 to get to the natural conclusion of some of these cases. So when you sort of put all that together, it's a little bit worrying. I mean, I don't know what, from your side of things on the insurance side, have you seen a massive increase in claims recently?
So unfortunately we had, really. And I mean, the bulk of the claims, unsurprisingly, came last year, when obviously all the sort of pandemic hit and the aftermath. And what the furlough scheme especially did is almost limit that, and has done to a certain degree. But with that coming to an end, with all the new legislation coming to an end, and with the backlog still not cleared, which is originally they thought it would be, it's putting everybody in a position which, one, leaves quite a lot of uncertainty for landlords and for ourselves and for everyone involved, really. Even tenants, the uncertainty around that's difficult to deal with. But also it means that the light is almost, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine rollout, but it doesn't mean it's going to go away. And the problems that we've been facing for almost 12 months now,
I know,
which is scary, don't just go away because everyone's vaccinated. There's been a huge build-up over this time that needs to clear. And like you say, 2023, scary dates, and even that's an approximate.
Yeah, well, I mean, even if you just look at the logistics of getting a court case through court, not only sort of the hoops you've got to jump through now to get to court, but it's there's a massive queue, and you've got to be a priority case. And most of the situations that people are in are probably not deemed as a priority. I mean, another statistic, I like my stats, unfortunately. They reckon 18% of people in arrears are over £1,000, which, to a landlord, that could be a couple of mortgage payments. And that's, even before you take any action, there's that worry that, that how much more arrears are these people going to get into? I mean, the other stark, I did not realise until I did a bit of looking around this morning, is that there's 9.9 million people on furlough at the minute. 9.9 million. I mean, that's a massive amount of people who, at the end of April, could potentially be out of work and be in a situation where they can't afford to pay their rent. I think there's about 4.5 million private renters. So it's a massive amount of folk.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that 9.9 million actually is higher now than it was this time last year. When the sort of, not this time last year, obviously that was before the pandemic, but when the pandemic came in, and people were on
Everything's a
furlough.
blur
Yeah,
at the minute.
yeah, it is all blurry
What day
now.
is it again? Is it? It's Friday. Yeah.
It's higher now than it ever was before, and you think
Yeah.
that's scary. That is absolutely scary. It's probably not surprising when you watch the news and companies who are probably held off before, so Arcadia Group, Debenhams, and all those where they weren't making such big redundancies are now having to do so, and that is more worrying because we've made a huge fundamental shift from tenants who are previously just not willing to pay and didn't want to pay, but now unable to do so.
Yeah.
And that's a really big shift in terms of the mentality of tenants and the ability to, because before, with those who are unwilling to do so, you almost knew where you stood. You could potentially work with them, or we could come to some kind of arrangement. Those who aren't able to do so, that there is almost no light at the end of the tunnel to say to them, okay, your problems are going to be resolved by this date. Let's get back to normal.
Yeah.
They're in a position, same as the landlords, and so it's incredibly important to protect both.
Yeah, I mean, and just sort of in addition to this, as happens with this industry, as you know, lastminute.com, you find out about other things that are creeping in, like we've talked about this offline, about this new breathing space legislation. Now, I don't know how many people actually know much about this, but I think this has been brought in on the back of the furlough ending, because it sort of seems to be a natural progression, because this is going to come in on the 4th Star Wars Day, actually, weirdly enough, on the 4th of May. And I don't know if anybody out there knows what it's about, but basically it will allow tenants to approach a local authority or a debt charity and basically say, I can't afford to pay the rent because of X, Y, and Z. Now, they've got to justify that. But what it will mean for landlords, and this is the reason for sort of getting together today, I think, is that you will not be able to chase your tenant for any rent arrears for a period of time. Now, there are two types of breathing space. There's the standard breathing space, which is can't afford it. And I think you've got 60 days where you have a moratorium on your rent. But then there's also the mental health breathing space. Now, this one's a little bit, I mean, I don't know what you've read into this, but at the moment they're saying you have a moratorium until 30 days after treatment. Now, we all know everyone's mental health at the moment during this madness is at an all-time low, and is there's a lot of people in a bad place at the moment. So, from my point of view, I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are in this situation and will be approaching the council, etc. But what on earth is that going to mean for rent if you cannot pursue anyone for 30 days after treatment, because someone could be getting treated for years? I mean, I don't know what, from your side of things, there's been any investigations as to the clarity of what they're saying at government level. It's just, I just like, what?
That's it. Clarity from government level is always a difficult one. But you absolutely hit the nail on the head in terms of that. It seems to be something that was sort of brought in quite subtly and quite quiet, and
slipped in under the radar.
It absolutely was. And so many people who I speak to, both letting agents and landlords, are still unaware that it's coming into effect and it's going to have such a huge impact. It's essentially taking the control out of the landlord's hands in terms of what they can do for their rent, and on the back of it, lenders are not going to automatically give landlords a break or a holiday because their tenants are part of this breathing space or have taken the breathing space and the advantage of it. Now, exactly like you said, the 60 days, maximum of 60 days for the normal breathing space, and then for the mental health, 30 days after treatment. But it's very difficult to say in terms of mental health treatment. And I am not an expert on mental health or the treatment of it. But it can run into years, and you could essentially be in a position there where you can't even contact your tenant about it because they are in this breathing space.
And then the other interesting thing was, one of the first things we said, well, if a tenant's got a guarantor, they'll be fine. It's not a problem. But then the issue there is if the guarantor also takes a breathing space, you can't approach the guarantor either. So we're sort of in this situation now where, again, there could be rent arrears clocking up that landlords can't do anything about. So hence having the conversation with you today, because obviously from your point of view, what would you be advising landlords now to do? I mean, is there anything that they can do at this stage before this becomes law?
So, as you said, it comes into effect on 4th of May. So there is still time to act. And essentially what I would advise a landlord is to absolutely honestly look at your current situation, in terms of your rental income and what that means to you as an individual. Can you afford realistically to not receive the rental income for a significant period of time and not pay and to still to continue paying your mortgage off? If you can do, great, you're in a fortunate position there. If you can't do that and you do rely on the rental income, you need the assistance in the same way that the tenants are going to be provided this assistance through the breathing space. Now, the best thing to do is to take out rental guarantee, rental protection, so that you can use that to fall back on. Hopefully, it won't impact your tenant, but if it does, then you've got the peace of mind and the ability to continue operating how you usually do, living your life, especially if you're using that for personal circumstances, and getting that rental income on a regular basis. Now, for landlords, in terms of acting, they'll have to get in contact through you to be able to take out a rent guarantee. So it's always through the agent. We don't provide direct to landlord cover. But if they are working with a reputable agent such as Belvoir, then get in touch immediately to find out the options available to you, because we can offer it mid-tenancy too. And
so if we're looking at the cover, because I know that things have changed a little bit for let lines as insurance providers as well, any landlords that might be interested in sort of protecting their interests and their rental income, what sort of cover are they looking at getting now? Because some of these companies, they have like a month's excess or 2 months excess, which obviously if you're not getting any rent money, that's problematic. So what sort of cover do you offer then?
So we are nil excess policies. We're quite a big believer of offering a nil excess policy, because not everybody can afford to have the excess on there. Most importantly as well, no COVID exclusions. There are some policies out there which shamefully, in my eyes, have that as part of their policy wording.
Can I ask about that? What sort of thing do these things? I mean, obviously you're not going to name names or anything, but what sort of exclusions are you talking about? And what would that say, sort of thing?
So it basically, because the legislation, well, with the government bringing in various different legislations, they've brought in a few over the time since of COVID. Other policies have either pulled from the market mid cover and no longer sort of willing to offer, and they've had that as part of their terms, that if something dramatic such as this came into effect, they could do. But also those who are continuing to offering with the COVID exclusions have been withholding payments until they are able to get to vacant possession, until they can take the tenant to court to actually remove them or evict them, and will not pay out until essentially they're able to see what the damage and limitations will be.
Right.
Now, that essentially, for me, is essentially an irresponsible position to take, because
it feels a bit morally wrong as well.
Exactly. A landlord's taken out the policy with the peace of mind, and that's what they deserve to have. By providing something that that gives anything but that, like you say, feels not great on the moral scale, but also it's not exactly doing what the landlord believed it to do.
So it's nil excess. What else sort of, how much cover would they get? And when would it sort of kick in, I suppose, is the next two questions.
Yeah, so it kicks in. So because it's nil excess, essentially kicks in from the first points of arrears, but it essentially pays out 30 days from when the tenant's not paid. So in terms of cash flow purposes for a landlord, it'll almost work a month in arrears, essentially, for them to be paid out on that. But because it is nil excess, it does backdate to the first time. We have recently actually just increased our cover limit. So it's now providing up to 15 months worth of rent. And also we've doubled the total claims limits to £100,000. And that covers the rent should the tenant fail to pay and any legal expenses. So the legal expenses as well is always a key one that's not always considered by landlords, because that can, before COVID, that was approximately £2,000 to £3,000 to evict the tenant just in legal fees alone. There's not been any data since then, but I'm absolutely certain it's most likely gone up. And so to have that covered as well is absolutely crucial, because we're there to provide the support, the guidance, the expertise the whole way through the process, as well as everything being covered in terms of the costs. And then on the rental side, as I said, up to 15 months, which means that it goes beyond the time limits and the sort of restrictions the government put in for the actual serving of any notices and evicting a tenant. And it basically means that for all cases we've dealt with currently, it's covering that full eviction process.
Yeah. So if you say you've got a property where there's two tenants and they sort of share the rent, so, 50-50, say, for example, and one can pay and the other can't, would the cover sort of kick in for the bit that the tenant that couldn't pay, or has it got to be a full month's rent before you could do anything about it? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So no, it doesn't have to be a full month's rent. And so the policy is, the cover is on the property.
Right.
And so essentially, in that example, if the tenants are both liable for the rent there and fail to pay to do so, then we cover the difference essentially. It doesn't have to be a full month's rent there. So if they've only paid a portion of it but still owed half, so say they owed sort of £300 there, we're going to cover that essentially until either the tenants get back on track or unfortunately we needed to go the full 9 yards in terms of eviction.
Yeah. And then obviously one of the things that, one of the questions that's on my mind, say, for example, you've got an agent or a landlord that's agreed historically that the tenant only needs to pay X amount of rent per month. Clearly, if that agreement is in place and then they fall into arrears that are over and above what they've agreed, they would be able to claim. Is that right?
That's right. So if an agreement's in place, most common one, as you kind of mentioned, is what's sort of regarded as a deferral agreement.
Yep.
So if that is in place, it doesn't invalidate cover at all. Cover is still valid and in place. Essentially, we just look to mimic that agreement. So if a tenant is only sort of due to pay a portion of the rent, then we cover that portion. But once they're due to pay back the higher level of rent, then we continue to do so. So at the end of the term, for when the tenant should be paying back all arrears, the landlord won't be out of pocket a single penny for the rent that should be owed.
Okay, brilliant. So sorry, I'm firing all these questions at you now, but it's things that, hopefully the viewers will be thinking about. So let's say two scenarios. You've got a landlord with another agent who thinks, well, I'm not getting what I want from my agent. I'm going to switch over to Belvoir or whoever to get this really good cover and to protect my rental income. Or you've got a let-only landlord that's been managing themselves, for themselves. What would they need to do, or what would they need to provide to allow them to have the cover if they did come to us for it? Is there certain minimum requirements that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are requirements for us to be able to accept a property onto cover mid-tenancy. First and foremost, though, for those landlords in those positions is to definitely, as a first point of call, get in touch with Belvoir or another reputable agent, but most likely, to be honest, Belvoir, because we do not offer cover for mid-tenancy properties to every agent. We have to have that ongoing working relationship because there is a certain higher degree of risk available. But for that landlord then, in terms of it, so as long as everything had been met in terms of the legislation at the time, so correctly registered deposits and tenancy agreements in place, then essentially, as long as the tenant's not currently in arrears and hasn't been in arrears for the last 6 months, then we can look to accept that property on to cover mid-tenancy.
Yeah. So for example, if we were, and a landlord was switching agents and the agent wasn't very forthcoming in, like, for example, providing references, credit checks and whatnot, as long as they can guarantee that rent's been paid for the last 6 months, that you don't necessarily need that information. Is that right?
So if we have that information to hand, then we will look to use it as part of it. So we can obviously judge the assessment and the risk around that actual tenancy. Appreciate, another agent might not always be forthcoming, or the landlord might not have the documents available if it was a long historic tenancy. In those cases where they might not have all the information to hand, what we would say is we could potentially look at them on as a bit of a case-by-case basis. And look to assess it on as I said, on a one-on-one. We might impose maybe some higher restrictions in terms of that. So if they don't have all the information to hand, we might say that no arrears for the last 12 months, perhaps. Yeah. Just so we can obviously make sure that it's not.
Yeah. I think the key with it all, isn't it, is that if you're worrying about the situation with furlough ending and this breathing space thing coming in, is to pick the phone up and speak to one of us. Obviously, not necessarily us. They can let alliance. There's access to you. However, they might not have access to this particular product by going to you direct. That's probably what That's right, isn't it? Because it's a specific thing for Belvoir. Just
Absolutely.
you said about mid-tenancy. So what you're basically saying is a landlord that maybe has, just to clarify, a tenant already in a property, they don't have to wait for the tenant to clear off before they look at doing this. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could have a tenant in place, and that could be 6 months, 6 years, or they could have been there for even longer. We don't require them to leave and somebody new sort of move into the property and or go through the whole referencing process again. We can almost leave them at peace and still look to provide that cover to the landlord.
All right, brilliant. Now, before we disappear off, because I'm sure your stomach's rumbling because it's lunchtime, anything else you think that we need to sort of mention to the viewers out there about, this situation that we're in? I mean, for me, I think I'm a landlord as well. I'd be looking at this now because I wouldn't want to wait till the end of April because things could change quite dramatically, as we know.
Yeah, absolutely, and things change so quickly, and the information's not actually as readily available as you would probably expect it to be. This breathing space legislation really did kind of slip through the net for a lot of people, and a lot of landlords and agents still are quite unaware of it. I think it is definitely not too late to act now if you are a landlord and you don't have cover, but it will be soon, because unfortunately, if a tenant is in arrears, we can't provide cover.
Yeah.
In which case, if you wait till after the furlough scheme ends, if you wait till all these things come to an end and the tenants then unfortunately lost their job through redundancies, unwilling to pay or can't pay, then it's going to be too late. So the most important thing is to pick up the phone, even to have a conversation. I'm sure you and your team will be more than happy to give some advice as well as the service.
Advice is free. So, we're here 5 days a week, and we're more than happy to do that because it's, with all of this, it's about communication, it's about peace of mind, and it's just making sure that everybody is protected as much as they possibly can be. I mean, even, we don't want to be evicting tenants. However, we want to be able to ensure that the landlord doesn't lose that property because they're not being able to pay their mortgage. So it's it's a dual-edged thing, isn't it? So
absolutely.
Well, all I can do is say thank you for your time today. And obviously, if anybody has any questions, they can get in touch with us. Our number's 01-234 290 685. And hopefully, we'll try and do these a little bit more regularly. Hopefully, not leave it as long as we did last time. But thank you very much, and I shall speak to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Emily.